Can you imagine these words? Those were the last words my father said to me before he shoved me into an October storm and locked the door behind me. Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter. I was 15 years old. I had no coat, no phone, no money, just a school backpack with algebra homework inside and rain already soaking through my sneakers. 3 hours later, the police called him, and when he heard what they said, his face went white as a ghost. But by then, it was way too late. I'm Sherry Walls. I'm 28 now, sitting in my Boston apartment watching rain slide down the window. There's a letter on my kitchen table, shaky handwriting on cheap nursing home stationery. After 13 years of silence, my father wants to see me, says he's dying, says he's sorry. Funny thing about rain, it always takes me back to that night. October 14th, 2011. I remember coming home from school like it was any other Tuesday. Backpack over one shoulder, head full of the algebra test I'd just aced. I was thinking about dinner, about homework, about the band poster I wanted to buy with my birthday money. Normal 15-year-old stuff. I had absolutely no idea that in less than 2 hours, I'd be walking alone through a freezing storm, wondering if I was going to survive the night. The moment I stepped through that front door, I knew something was wrong. My father was standing in the living room, looking like a volcano about to explode. His face was the color of raw meat. His hands were shaking, and he was holding a wad of cash in one fist and empty pill bottles in the other. My sister Corinne stood right behind him. She was 19, 4 years older than me, and she had this expression on her face, concerned, worried, heartbroken. The perfect picture of a devoted older sister who just discovered something terrible about her baby sibling. But I saw her eyes. I caught that little flicker she couldn't quite hide. Satisfaction. Our stepmother, Jolene, hovered in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed together, saying absolutely nothing. That was her specialty. Saying nothing while bad things happened. My father didn't even let me put down my backpack. He started screaming like I'd set the house on fire. He said I'd been stealing from his wallet for months. He said I'd been buying pills, hiding them in my room. He said Corinne had found the evidence. Cash stuffed in my dresser, pill bottles in my closet, text messages proving I was talking to drug dealers. I tried to explain. I tried to tell him I'd never touched his wallet, never seen those pills, didn't even know what he was talking about. But the words died in my throat because I realized something horrible. He wasn't listening. His mind was already made up. Corinne had spent the whole day preparing him, feeding him lies like poison wrapped in sugar. She stood there looking devastated, telling him she'd tried so hard to help me, tried to get me to stop. She said she hadn't wanted to tell him, but she just couldn't watch her little sister destroy herself anymore. It was a masterpiece performance, Academy Award worthy, and my father swallowed every single word like it was gospel truth. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises and dragged me toward the front door. My backpack was right there where I dropped it. He picked it up and threw it at my chest so hard I stumbled backward. Then he opened the door. Rain was already coming down in sheets, thunder rolling somewhere in the distance. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees since that morning, and my father looked me dead in the eyes and said those words again. Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter. He pushed me onto the porch. The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. And just like that, at 15 years old, I was homeless. I stood on that porch for maybe 5 minutes, completely frozen. Not from the cold, though that was coming, but from shock. I kept waiting for the door to open again, waiting for someone to say it was all a big misunderstanding. Nobody came. My phone was sitting on my bedroom desk. I wasn't allowed to grab anything except what was already in my hands. My backpack had textbooks, a half-eaten granola bar, and absolutely nothing useful for surviving a night outside. No jacket, no money, no way to call for help. 2011. Payphones still existed somewhere, but who carries quarters? Not a 15-year-old who spent her allowance on band posters. Priorities, right? Straight-A student, 0-star survival skills. So I started walking. I didn't make a conscious decision about where to go. My body just moved on autopilot toward the only safe place I knew. My grandmother Dorothy's house 7 miles away. My mom's mom, the one person who always looked at me like I mattered. 7 miles doesn't sound like much when you're driving. When you're walking through freezing rain in canvas sneakers with no coat, it might as well be 700. Route 9 stretched ahead of me, dark and slick with rain. Cars splashed past without slowing down. I was just a shadow on the roadside, a shape nobody wanted to look at too closely. After the first mile, my clothes were soaked through to my skin. After the second mile, I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. After the third mile, my teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might crack. But I kept walking. What else could I do? Go back and beg my father to believe me. He'd already made up his mind. I had nowhere else to go except forward, one numb step at a time. The thing about hypothermia is that you don't realize it's happening until it's almost too late. Your body starts shutting down piece by piece, and your brain gets foggy, and suddenly sitting down for just a minute seems like the best idea in the world. Just a quick rest, just until you catch your breath. I made it 4 miles before my legs gave out. There was a mailbox up ahead. I remember thinking I'd just lean against it for a second, catch my breath, then I'd keep going. Grandma's house was only 3 more miles. I could make it, but my knees buckled before I got there. The gravel came up fast, and then everything went dark. 3 hours after throwing his daughter into a storm, my father's phone rang. The voice on the other end was cold and professional. Officer Daniels with county police. There'd been an incident. His daughter had been found unconscious on Route 9, hypothermia. She was being transported to County General Hospital. And one more thing, sir. Child Protective Services has been notified. A caseworker is already on site. We have some questions about why a 15-year-old girl was walking alone in a dangerous storm with no coat and no phone. We're going to need you to come down to the hospital and bring whatever evidence you have. My father's face went pale as bone. I know because the hospital staff told me later. They said he looked like a man watching his whole life crumble in slow motion. Corinne was standing right next to him when he got that call. And for the first time, her perfect mask slipped, just for a second. But it was enough, because here's the thing about that night, the thing that changed everything. The woman who found me unconscious on that roadside wasn't just some random stranger driving home. Her name was Gloria Hensley, and she'd spent 35 years working for Child Protective Services. She'd seen every kind of abuse, every kind of neglect, every kind of lie that parents tell about their children. She knew exactly what she was looking at when she found a teenage girl in the rain, with no coat and no phone and no one looking for her, and she wasn't about to let it slide. My father thought he was getting rid of a problem that night, thought he was cleaning house, cutting out the bad apple, protecting his family from a sick daughter who didn't deserve his love. But what he actually did was light a fuse, and he had no idea what was about to explode. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time is it there. I see everything. Thank you so much for your support. Now, to understand what happened that night, to really understand why my sister did what she did, I need to take you back to when everything started falling apart. My mother, Patricia, died in 2006, cancer. I was 10 years old. Corinne was 14. One day, we had a mom who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and braided my hair for school pictures. The next day, we were standing by a hospital bed watching machines beep slower and slower until they stopped altogether. My father didn't handle it well. That's putting it mildly. He basically collapsed in on himself like a dying star. Went to work, came home, sat in his recliner, stared at nothing. The house could have burned down around him, and I'm not sure he would have noticed. So Corinne stepped up. At 14, she became the one who cooked dinner and signed permission slips and made sure I got to school on time. She became the responsible one, the mature one, the daughter my father could lean on. And he praised her for it constantly. What would I do without you, Corinne? You're so grown up, Corinne. You're the glue holding this family together, Corinne. I don't think he ever once asked how she was handling our mother's death. He just expected her to handle everything else instead. My father had 2 blind spots in life, his oldest daughter and his beloved recliner. Both were worn out, falling apart at the seams, and desperately needed to be replaced, but he couldn't see it. Men in their recliners, I swear. What nobody saw, what my father absolutely refused to see, was what happened when he wasn't looking. Corinne wasn't just stepping up. She was building a kingdom, and in her kingdom, I was the peasant who needed to be kept in her place. It started small, homework that mysteriously disappeared the night before it was due, permission slips for field trips that somehow never made it to my teachers, my favorite shirt shrunk in the wash, then another, then another. Oops, must have been an accident. Birthday party invitations I sent out that my friends never received, messages from classmates that got lost, a reputation being built brick by brick without me even knowing. She'd go to my teachers with this sad, concerned expression and tell them I was struggling after our mother's death, that I was acting out at home, that they should be patient with me because I was going through such a hard time. She painted a picture of a troubled child, and everyone believed her because she was so mature, so responsible, so caring. I tried to tell my father once, sat him down, and explained that Corinne was sabotaging me, that she was lying about me to everyone, that something was seriously wrong. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You're just jealous of your sister," he said. "She's trying to help this family. You should be grateful." After that, I learned to keep my mouth shut, stay small, stay quiet, survive until I could get out. 2 years after my mom died, my father remarried. Jolene was nice enough at first. She smiled a lot and made casseroles and tried really hard to be part of our family. Corinne immediately started calling her mom. It was strategic, I think, a way to cement her position as the good daughter, the loyal one. I couldn't do it. I couldn't call this stranger mom when my real mother had only been gone 2 years. It wasn't about Jolene. It was about my own heart not being ready, but that quiet rebellion cost me. From that day forward, Jolene treated me like an outsider in my own home. She and Corinne formed their own little club, and I wasn't invited. By the time I was 15, the lines were clearly drawn. Corinne was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. I was the troubled one, the difficult one, the daughter who just couldn't get it together. And then there was the money. My mother had set up trust funds for both of us before she died, $45,000 each, accessible when we turned 18. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something, a safety net, a gift from a mother who knew she wouldn't be there to help us start our adult lives. Corinne turned 18 in 2009 and got her share immediately. It was gone within 11 months. A flashy sports car, designer clothes, expensive gifts for her boyfriend Trent, a smooth-talking guy with big ideas, and absolutely no legitimate income. By the time I was kicked out 2 years later, Corinne was completely broke. Her trust fund was a distant memory, and Trent was always talking about his next big opportunity, his next investment scheme, the deal that was definitely going to make them rich. My $45,000 was just sitting there, untouchable until 2014 when I'd turn 18, unless something happened to me first. See, my mother's trust had a clause in it, a protection mechanism she probably thought would help us. If either daughter was declared legally incompetent or institutionalized before age 21, her share would be managed by a court-appointed family guardian until she recovered. Corinne and Trent figured out what that meant. If I got institutionalized for substance abuse, say because my father found pills and cash and evidence of drug dealing in my room, then someone would need to manage my trust fund on my behalf. Someone responsible, someone trustworthy, someone like a concerned older sister who only wanted what was best for me. $45,000. That's what I was worth to Corinne. That's the price she put on her own sister. The week before she destroyed my life, she put her plan into motion. Small cash withdrawals from my father's account using his ATM card. She knew his PIN because she handled all the household finances. Trent's empty prescription bottles collected and saved. A prepaid burner phone purchased at a convenience store, loaded with fake text messages. On the morning of October 14th, while I was eating breakfast and thinking about my algebra test, Corinne slipped into my room and planted everything. Cash in my dresser drawer, pills in my closet, a paper with the burner phone number as proof of my drug dealer contact. Then she went to our father with tears in her eyes and told him his youngest daughter had a terrible secret. He believed every word. Why wouldn't he? Corinne had spent 9 years being the perfect daughter, the responsible one, the one who never lied. And I had spent 9 years being painted as the troubled one before I even knew the portrait existed. By the time I walked through that front door after school, my trial was already over. The verdict was guilty, and the sentence was exile. That's how I ended up on Route 9 in October rain, walking toward my grandmother's house like it was the only light left in the world. But Corinne had made one mistake, one tiny error in her perfect plan. She didn't account for Gloria Hensley. I don't remember much about collapsing, just the gravel biting into my palms, and then nothing. Like someone switched off a television in the middle of a show. What I remember is waking up, fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and industrial floor cleaner, a scratchy hospital blanket tucked around me like I was something fragile, something worth protecting. I hadn't felt that way in years, and there was a woman sitting beside my bed, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, reading glasses perched on her nose, a paperback novel closed in her lap. She looked like someone's grandmother, the kind who baked cookies and always had tissues in her purse, but her eyes were sharp, observant, cataloging everything they saw. Her name was Gloria Hensley. She was 67 years old, retired after 35 years with Child Protective Services. She'd seen every kind of abuse, every kind of neglect, every kind of cruelty that adults could inflict on children. And on a cold October night, driving home from her book club meeting, her headlights had caught something by the roadside. A teenage girl unconscious, soaking wet, alone. Gloria pulled over so fast her tires screamed against the pavement. She had an emergency blanket in her trunk, old habits from her CPS days, and she wrapped me up like a burrito while she called 911. She stayed with me until the ambulance arrived. She followed the ambulance to the hospital, and when I woke up 4 hours later, she was still there. That woman might have saved my life, not just because she found me before the hypothermia finished what the storm started, but because she was exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. She handed me a cup of coffee when I opened my eyes. Hospital cafeteria coffee, the kind that tastes like regret brewed at 200 degrees. "This is terrible," she said, "but it's warm." I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in hours, maybe days. She smiled back, this knowing, gentle smile that said she understood more than I realized. "There she is," she said. "Now, why don't you tell me why a 15-year-old was walking alone on Route 9 in a storm with no coat and no phone?" So I told her everything. The accusations, the planted evidence, the years of Corinne's manipulation. I told her things I'd never told anyone because no one had ever actually listened. Gloria just sat there, nodding occasionally, never interrupting, never doubting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I believe you, and I'm going to help you prove it." Those 7 words changed my life. While I was unconscious, things had been happening. The hospital contacted police because a minor had been found in a dangerous situation. Police tried to reach my next of kin. That meant calling my father. I would have loved to see his face when Officer Daniels delivered the news. Apparently, it went something like this. "Mr. Walls, your 15-year-old daughter was found unconscious on Route 9. She says you expelled her from your home this evening during a storm. Hypothermia. She's at County General. We need you to come in. And sir, Child Protective Services has been notified. A caseworker is already on site. Bring whatever evidence you have." My father and Corinne arrived at the hospital around 10:15 that night. I was awake by then, sitting up in my hospital bed with Gloria beside me. Also in the room, a CPS caseworker named Maria Santos and a uniformed police officer. Not exactly the welcome committee my father was expecting. He looked shaken, not guilty, not yet, just annoyed and confused, like this was all a big inconvenience. Corinne was right behind him, and for the first time in my life, I saw her look nervous. The smirk she'd been wearing when I left wasn't anywhere to be found. They expected to find a scared, apologetic girl ready to confess her sins and beg to come home. Instead, they found a room full of professionals asking very pointed questions about why a child was wandering alone in dangerous weather with no means of communication or protection. The power dynamic had shifted, and Corinne felt it. She tried to run her usual script. Concerned older sister, troubled younger sibling. We just want what's best for her. But Maria Santos wasn't buying it. 30 years of social work had given her a finely tuned radar for deception, and Corinne was setting off every alarm. Then my grandmother arrived. Dorothy Reeves was 67 years old, 5 feet 2 inches of pure determination, and she was absolutely not in the mood for nonsense. My mother was her only daughter, and I was her only grandchild, and she had never trusted my father or his new family. She lived 40 minutes from the hospital. She made it in 25. I heard her before I saw her, that distinctive click of sensible heels coming down the hallway at a pace that meant business. She swept into my room like a small, silver-haired hurricane and immediately positioned herself between me and my father. "That's my granddaughter," she announced to everyone present. "What has this fool done now?" My father tried to explain, tried to justify, started talking about the stealing, the pills, the evidence. Dorothy listened for about 30 seconds before holding up one hand. "Raymond," she said, "I've known you for 15 years, and you've never been the sharpest tool in the shed. But this might be your dumbest moment yet. You threw a child into a storm based on what? Pills that appeared out of nowhere? Cash that magically materialized? Did you even ask her side of the story?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Dorothy nodded. "That's what I thought." Here's the thing about my grandmother. She didn't just love me, she fought for me. That night, while I sat exhausted and hypothermic in a hospital bed, Dorothy Reeves went to war. She demanded an emergency custody hearing. Right there, right then. It was nearly midnight, but she didn't care. She called a family court judge who owed her a favor. Apparently, Dorothy had been on the PTA with his wife for 15 years and got him on the phone. The hospital social worker presented the facts. A minor child expelled into dangerous weather conditions. No investigation conducted before expulsion. No attempt to verify accusations. Child found unconscious with early-stage hypothermia. Father's evidence unexamined by any professional. By 12:30 in the morning, I had a new home. Emergency temporary guardianship was granted to Dorothy Reeves, effective immediately. My father was ordered to have no contact with me until a full investigation was completed. CPS would be interviewing everyone. Me, Corinne, my father, Jolene, and they would be taking a very close look at that so-called evidence. As we walked out of the hospital, my father tried one more time. He reached toward me, started to say something. Dorothy stepped between us without breaking stride. "You don't get to touch her," she said. "You don't get to talk to her. You had your chance to be her father, and you threw it away. Literally threw it into a storm. Now we're leaving." She guided me out to her old Buick, the one she'd been driving since before I was born, helped me into the passenger seat, tucked another blanket around me even though the car heater was already blasting. I looked at her with tears streaming down my face. "Grandma, I don't even have clean clothes. I don't have anything." She patted my hand, her eyes fierce and gentle at the same time. "Honey, you have me, and I have a Target card. Tomorrow we shop. Tonight you eat soup and sleep in a bed where nobody is going to throw you out, ever." That was the first night of my new life. Grandma Dorothy's house had 3 rules: breakfast at 8, homework before TV, and absolutely no nonsense before her second cup of coffee. It wasn't fancy, and it wasn't big, but it was warm and safe and full of love. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. 2 weeks later, the CPS investigator called my grandmother. "Mrs. Reeves," Maria Santos said, "you might want to sit down. We've been examining the evidence Mr. Walls provided. The timeline doesn't add up, and we found some security footage that tells a very different story. Corinne's perfect plan was about to fall apart, and she had no idea what was coming. The investigation changed everything. Maria Santos wasn't just a caseworker checking boxes. She was a detective in a cardigan, and she didn't just look at evidence, she traced it. Every receipt, every timestamp, every thread. And the more she pulled, the more Corinne's perfect story unraveled. It started with the cash. $800 had been found in my dresser drawer. My father said it proved I'd been stealing from him for months. Open and shut case, right? Except Maria Santos actually checked the bank records. That $800 came from a single ATM withdrawal on October 14th, the same day I was kicked out. The bank provided surveillance footage from the machine. Timestamp, 2:47 in the afternoon. The person on camera wasn't me. It was Corinne, clear as day. Same jacket she'd been wearing that morning. Same ponytail. Same car parked in the background. Her white sedan with the dent in the bumper from when she'd backed into a mailbox the previous summer. Here's the thing about alibis. Mine was airtight. At 2:47 p.m. on October 14th, I was sitting in fifth period chemistry class, learning about molecular bonds. The school attendance system showed me present until 3:15. My teacher remembered me asking a question about covalent electrons. I couldn't have made that withdrawal. Physically impossible. I was in a classroom 12 miles away, surrounded by 30 witnesses and an electronic check-in system. Corinne thought she was so clever. But here's the thing about being a criminal mastermind. You actually have to be smart. She used our father's ATM card without considering that banks have cameras. She made the withdrawal in the middle of the afternoon without checking if I had an alibi. She bought the burner phone at a convenience store 2 blocks from her gym, on camera in her yoga pants, with her car visible in the parking lot. Some masterminds wear capes. Corinne wore Lululemon, and she got caught because she couldn't be bothered to drive an extra 10 minutes. Then there were the pills. The bottles planted in my closet were traced back to a prescription for Trent Barlow, Corinne's boyfriend, the one with all the big ideas and no legitimate income. Anxiety medication, prescribed by his doctor, filled at the pharmacy on Oak Street. Maria Santos called that pharmacy. Interesting finding. Trent had reported those pills stolen, filed a police report and everything, claiming someone broke into his car and took them. Very concerned citizen behavior. Except he filed that report on October 17th, 3 days after I was kicked out. If those pills were already stolen and hidden in my room on October 14th, why did Trent wait 3 days to report the theft? The answer was obvious, because they weren't stolen. Corinne gave them to him to plant, and then he reported them missing afterward to cover their tracks and get a refill. The delayed theft report was like a flashing neon sign that said, "We planned this. If this story is hitting close to home, I hope you'll stick around, because what happens next is worth every second." Drop a like if you're rooting for me. It means the world. But the real smoking gun was the burner phone. The fake drug dealer texts came from a prepaid phone purchased at a convenience store on October 10th, 4 days before everything went down. Maria Santos tracked down the store and requested their security footage. The buyer was a young woman, brown hair and a ponytail, athletic build, paid cash, but her car was clearly visible through the window, a white sedan, with a dent in the bumper. Same car, same woman, same trail of breadcrumbs leading straight back to my sister. As the investigation deepened, an even uglier picture emerged. Maria Santos started digging into our family's finances, specifically checks written on my father's account over the past 2 years. What she found made the $800 look like pocket change. Someone had been forging checks in my father's name for nearly 2 years. Small amounts at first, 50 here, 100 there, but they added up. The signatures were close, but not quite right. The money went to accounts connected to Trent Barlow and his various business ventures. Total amount stolen, just under $18,000. Corinne hadn't just framed me. She'd been robbing our father blind for years, and she needed me gone before anyone noticed. My grandmother, Dorothy, wasn't about to let this slide. She hired Leonard Vance, an old family friend who'd practiced family law for 30 years. He'd known my mother, Patricia, since grade school, and when Dorothy explained what had happened, his face went hard in a way that made me glad he was on my side. Leonard filed for permanent guardianship immediately. He also filed a civil suit against Corinne for fraud, emotional distress, and whatever else he could make stick. And he made sure my trust fund was protected with additional oversight so nobody could touch it until I turned 18. That year taught me something I carry with me still. Keep records of everything. Every receipt, every message, every promise someone makes. Write it down. My grandmother kept a folder for every important document in her life. Bills, letters, tax returns, warranties. She called it her paper insurance. After everything that happened, I started doing the same thing. I was 16 years old and I bought my first filing cabinet. Still have it, still use it. Some habits save your life. Living with Grandma Dorothy was like learning to breathe again after years of holding my breath. Her house wasn't big or fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that smelled like coffee and cinnamon. But it was warm and it was safe. And nobody there was plotting against me. She enrolled me in a new school where nobody knew my history. I made real friends for the first time. people who liked me for me. Not because they'd been fed a story about who I was supposed to be. I started seeing a counselor, finally processing years of manipulation that I'd absorbed without even realizing. Grandma Dorothy didn't have a lot of rules, but she was strict about one thing: dinner at 6, no exceptions. She said chaos can wait until after the meatloaf. Honestly, best advice I've ever gotten. Meanwhile, my father's world was crumbling. The CPS investigation put the entire Walls household under a microscope. Raymond was questioned multiple times, each session leaving him more exhausted and confused. How had he missed so much? How had he been so blind? Jolene started sleeping in the guest room. Conversations between them became clipped, tense, loaded with accusations neither of them wanted to say out loud, and Corinne was furious. Not sorry, and never sorry. Just angry that her plan had fallen apart. She blamed everyone but herself. The CPS investigator was biased. The bank footage was misleading. Trent's prescription records were a misunderstanding. The golden child's crown was slipping, and she couldn't stand it. Leonard Vance spent months building an airtight case. Bank records, surveillance footage, pharmacy documents, phone purchase receipts. He collected witness statements from Gloria Hensley, from my teachers, from neighbors who'd noticed Corinne's car coming and going at odd hours. Even some of Corinne's former friends came forward. Turns out she'd burned a lot of bridges over the years, and people were happy to share stories about her lies, her manipulation, her casual cruelty. The court date was set for March 2012, but 1 month before the hearing, something unexpected happened. Trent Barlow got arrested in Nevada. Federal marshals picked him up for running the same investment scam in 3 different states. Over $400,000 stolen from victims who trusted him with their savings. He was facing serious federal charges, possibly 15 years in prison. His lawyer made a phone call the next day. Trent was ready to cooperate, ready to make a deal, ready to tell the truth about everything, including his girlfriend, Corinne, and what she'd done to her little sister. The walls were closing in, and Corinne had nowhere left to run. Trent Barlow was many things: a con artist, a liar, a man who'd built his entire life on other people's trust and money. But he wasn't loyal. The moment federal prosecutors offered him a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation, he sang like a canary with a record deal. His written statement was 12 pages long. He confirmed everything. The plan to frame me had been Corinne's idea from the beginning. She'd been stealing from our father for nearly 2 years, funneling money to Trent for his investments. When she realized her theft was getting harder to hide, she decided she needed a scapegoat. That scapegoat was me. Corinne figured I was the perfect target. The troubled younger sister, the one who'd never fit in, the one nobody would believe. She told Trent that getting me institutionalized would solve 2 problems at once. She'd have someone to blame for the missing money, and she'd get access to my trust fund as my guardian. $45,000. That's what she planned to steal from me while I sat in some facility, drugged and discredited and completely alone. Trent wrote it all down. The planning sessions, the pill bottles he provided, the burner phone Corinne purchased, the morning she planted the evidence in my room. He even included text messages between them from the days leading up to October 14th. Messages that proved this wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, premeditated, cold. His final line stayed with me. Corinne said her sister was a nobody who wouldn't fight back. She was wrong. March 2012, family court. I'd been living with Grandma Dorothy for 5 months by then. I'd gained weight, the good kind. The kind that comes from regular meals and actual sleep. I'd made honor roll at my new school. I'd started to remember what it felt like to be a normal teenager. But walking into that courtroom, I felt 15 again, scared and small and wondering if anyone would believe me. Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand. Leonard Vance nodded reassuringly. And Gloria Hensley was there too, sitting in the gallery, wearing the same reading glasses and the same fierce expression she'd had the night she found me. The hearing was supposed to be about guardianship, simple stuff, making Dorothy's temporary custody permanent, establishing support obligations, that kind of thing. But it turned into something much bigger. The district attorney had gotten involved. With Trent's confession and the mountain of evidence Maria Santos had compiled, this wasn't just a family court matter anymore. There were criminal charges on the table. Corinne sat on the other side of the courtroom with a public defender she'd met an hour before. She looked smaller than I remembered, paler. The confident golden child who'd controlled our household for a decade now looked like exactly what she was, a scared young woman whose lies had finally caught up with her. Our father sat alone in the gallery. Jolene had refused to come. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 5 months. The evidence was presented systematically, professionally, devastatingly. A TM footage showing Corinne making the withdrawal at 2:47 p.m. My school attendance records, proving I was in chemistry class at that exact time. Pharmacy records showing Trent's conveniently delayed theft report. Security footage from the convenience store showing Corinne buying the burner phone. 2 years of forged checks totaling $18,000. And Trent's confession. Read into the record word by word. When it was Corinne's turn to take the stand, she tried to maintain her story, tried to look confused and innocent and deeply concerned about her troubled sister. The prosecutor wasn't having it. "Ms. Walls," she said, showing the ATM photograph, "is this you at First National Bank on October 14th at 2:47 p.m.? Corinne swallowed. She looked at the image of herself, clear as daylight. I was getting money for groceries. Groceries. The prosecutor nodded slowly. $800 in cash for groceries. And you didn't mention this withdrawal to your father when you accused your sister of stealing that exact amount later that same day? Silence. And the location of this ATM. It's 12 miles from your sister's school, a school where attendance records show she was present until 3:15 p.m. Can you explain how she could have made this withdrawal while sitting in chemistry class? More silence. Corinne's public defender objected, but there was nothing to object to. The evidence was the evidence. Facts didn't care about her feelings. Then they called Jolene. My stepmother looked like she wanted to be anywhere else on earth. She'd spent years staying quiet, staying neutral, not getting involved. But this was a courtroom, and she was under oath. And suddenly, staying quiet wasn't an option anymore. The prosecutor asked her about the morning of October 14th. Did she see anything unusual? Jolene's voice was barely above a whisper. Corinne went into Sherry's room that morning around 7 a.m. She said she was borrowing a hair tie. Did she come out with a hair tie? No. She came out empty-handed. And did you notice anything else in the days before the incident? Jolene closed her eyes. She looked like she was bracing for impact. 2 days before, I overheard Corinne on the phone with Trent. She said, everything is in place. And then she laughed. The courtroom went absolutely still. When they called our father to testify, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He had to explain why he expelled his 15-year-old daughter into a storm without investigating the accusations against her. Had to admit he never checked the bank records himself, never questioned why Corinne suddenly discovered this evidence, never asked for my side of the story. His voice cracked when he said, I trusted her. She's my firstborn. She was always the responsible one. I thought he couldn't finish. Judge Patricia Morrison had been on the bench for 30 years. She'd seen ugly custody battles, bitter divorces, families torn apart by lies and money and pride. But I think even she was disturbed by what she'd heard. Her words cut through the courtroom like a blade. Mr. Walls, trust is not an excuse for negligence. You expelled a minor child into dangerous weather conditions based on unverified accusations. You made no attempt to investigate. You chose one daughter over another without evidence, without reason, without basic parental judgment. That is not parenting. That is abandonment. My father sat there, gray-faced, as she continued. Your older daughter engaged in a calculated, premeditated scheme to destroy her sister's life. She stole from you, lied to you, and manipulated you into participating in her cruelty. And you let her, because it was easier to believe the daughter who made you feel good than to actually parent the daughter who needed you. Corinne's sentence came down hard. Fraud, theft, filing false statements to law enforcement, child endangerment. Her public defender negotiated a plea deal to avoid a full trial, 2 years suspended sentence, meaning she wouldn't go to prison unless she violated probation. 5 years of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution of all stolen funds, the $18,000 from our father, and the 800 she'd planted to frame me. The court also issued a permanent restraining order. Corinne was not allowed to contact me directly or indirectly for any reason. If she came within 500 feet of me, she'd go straight to jail. And here's the part that would follow her forever: felony conviction, permanently on her record. No more jobs in finance, no positions involving money or trust, no working with children or vulnerable adults. The golden child had a scarlet letter now, and it wasn't coming off. My father lost guardianship rights permanently. He was ordered to pay for my therapy and educational expenses until I turned 21. He was also ordered to establish a college fund from the restitution money. The community found out everything. Small towns talk. Within weeks, everyone knew what Raymond Walls had done to his younger daughter. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors looked away. His church group suddenly had scheduling conflicts whenever he tried to attend. Jolene filed for divorce 6 weeks later. She'd been complicit in my suffering, and she knew it. And she couldn't stand to be reminded of it every time she looked at her husband. The judge turned to me at the end. "Miss Walls," she said, "you've shown remarkable resilience in the face of extraordinary cruelty. The court grants full permanent custody to your grandmother, Dorothy Reeves. Your trust fund will remain protected until you reach 18, and I sincerely hope you have a better future than your past." I wanted to say something clever, something memorable. I wanted to say, "Your Honor, you should see me parallel park. That's the real test of character. But some jokes are just for yourself." And that moment was too big for humor. Instead, I just said thank you. As we walked out of the courthouse, my father tried one last time to approach me. "Sweetheart," he started, Grandma Dorothy stepped between us without breaking stride. Her voice was ice. "You don't get to call her that anymore. You lost that right when you threw her into a storm." We kept walking. I didn't look back. The sun was shining that day. March, in our part of the country, can go either way. But that afternoon was warm and bright and full of promise. I had a grandmother who loved me, a lawyer who'd fought for me, a caseworker and a retired CPS supervisor who'd believed me when no one else would. And I had a future, finally. But some stories don't end with the courtroom. Some stories have one more chapter. 13 years later, a letter arrived. October 2024. I'm 28 years old now, and my life looks nothing like I imagined when I was 15, walking through a storm with nothing but a school backpack and soaking wet sneakers. I live in Boston. Beautiful apartment with a view of the harbor. Morning light that streams through windows I actually chose myself. I'm a marketing director at a tech company. Good salary, good benefits, good people. I worked my way up from an internship, and every promotion felt like another step away from who I used to be. And I'm engaged. His name is Colin. He's a pediatric nurse, which tells you pretty much everything you need to know about his heart. We met at a charity event 2 years ago. I was there for work. He was there because he actually cared. He spilled wine on my dress, apologized for 10 minutes straight, and then made me laugh so hard I forgot to be annoyed. We're getting married in the spring. Life is good. Life is really genuinely, unbelievably good. Then the letter arrived. It came to my grandmother's address. Dorothy still lives in the same house, still sharp as ever at 80 years old, still following her 3 rules. Breakfast at 8, homework before TV, no nonsense before coffee. Some things never change. She called me, said something had arrived that I needed to see. Her voice was careful, neutral, the way she sounds when she's trying not to influence my decisions. I drove down that weekend. The envelope was plain white, cheap paper, with shaky handwriting I barely recognized. The return address was Maple Grove Care Center, a nursing home about an hour from where I grew up. I opened it at Dorothy's kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. "Dear Sherry," it began, "I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you. I know you have every reason to throw this letter away without reading it, but I'm asking anyway because I don't have much time left and I need to say this before I go. I'm at Maple Grove now. Had a stroke 2 years ago. Left side doesn't work so well anymore. Jolene is long gone. Took half of everything and moved to Florida with some accountant she met online. The house is sold. There's nothing left of the life I thought I had. Corinne came to see me last week. I wouldn't let her in the room. I can't look at her. I can't hear her voice without remembering what I did because of her lies. You're the only one I want to see, the only one I need to apologize to. I was your father, and I failed you in the worst way a parent can fail a child. I believed lies over truth. I chose comfort over justice. I threw you away like you were nothing. I know you owe me nothing. But if you can find it in your heart to come, just once, I'd like to tell you I'm sorry in person, before it's too late. Your father, Raymond. I sat there for a long time. The coffee got cold. The afternoon light shifted across the table. Dorothy didn't say anything. She just waited, the way she always had, letting me find my own way. 13 years of silence, 13 years of building a life without him. Did I owe him anything? No, I didn't. But I thought about my mother. I thought about the kind of person she'd raised me to be before she died. I thought about breaking cycles instead of perpetuating them. I decided to go. Not for him, for me. The nursing home was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, industrial floors, the smell of disinfectant trying to cover up the smell of endings. My father's room was small. Single bed, one window, a television mounted on the wall playing something nobody was watching. He looked 20 years older than his actual age, 73, but he could have passed for 90. The stroke had taken something vital out of him, left him crumpled and gray and small in a way I'd never seen. He cried when I walked in. Couldn't speak for the first few minutes, just sat there with tears running down his face while I stood by the door, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Eventually, he found his voice. He apologized, over and over, stumbling over words, repeating himself because the stroke had taken some of his language too. He said he'd been blind, stupid, cruel. He said losing me was the worst thing he'd ever done. He said he thought about that October night, every single day, every single night, every time it rained. I let him finish, didn't interrupt, didn't comfort him either. Then I said what I'd come to say. I forgive you. His face crumpled with relief. But I want you to understand what that means. I pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down, made sure he was looking at me. Forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. It means I'm choosing not to carry this anger anymore. It's heavy, and it's been weighing me down, and I'm done letting you take up space in my heart. You threw me into a storm because you believed a lie. You didn't believe it because the evidence was compelling. You believed it because it was easier, because Corinne made you feel good about yourself. And I reminded you of everything you'd lost when Mom died. You chose the comfortable lie over your own daughter. I built my entire life without you. I put myself through college. I built a career. I'm marrying a man who would never, ever throw me out in a drizzle, let alone a hurricane. I'm happy, but you need to live with what you did. That's not my burden to carry anymore. It's yours. He nodded, tears still streaming. I don't think he had words left. I know, he finally managed. I know. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. I needed to see you. One last time. I stayed for another 20 minutes. We didn't talk much. What else was there to say? I told him about my job, my apartment, Colin, surface things, safe things. He listened like it was the most important conversation of his life. When I got up to leave, he reached out with his good hand. Not grabbing, just reaching. I let him touch my fingers for a moment. Then I walked out. In the hallway, a nurse stopped me. You're his daughter, right? The younger one? I nodded. She glanced back toward his room, then at me. Your sister came by last week. He refused to see her, told us to send her away. I stood very still. He wouldn't see her? The nurse shook her head, said he could only stomach apologizing to one daughter, and it wasn't her. He got pretty upset about it, actually. Said he couldn't look at her face anymore without seeing what she'd done. I didn't know what to say to that. After all these years of being the rejected one, the throwaway daughter, the one who wasn't good enough, my father had finally rejected Corinne, the golden child, the favorite, the one he'd believed without question. Too late to matter, too late to heal anything, but still, something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. I'd already given that. Something more like completion, like the last page of a very long book, finally turning. I walked out of that nursing home into October sunshine. Same month, different weather, different life. 13 years ago, October meant rain and betrayal and hypothermia. Now October means falling leaves and pumpkin spice everything. Yes, I'm basic. I don't care. and the anniversary of when my real life began. Some storms don't destroy you, they redirect you. That October night 13 years ago, I lost a house, but I found my home. I lost a father who didn't deserve me, and I found a grandmother who did. I lost a sister who never loved me, and I found myself. Colin was waiting when I got back to Boston. Takeout containers on the counter, bad movie queued up on the TV, that patient look he gets when he knows I need processing time. "How'd it go?" he asked. I dropped my keys on the table and leaned into him. "I think I'm finally done," I said. "I think I can let it go now." He wrapped his arms around me and didn't ask any more questions. That's the thing about Colin. He knows when to push and when to just be there. It's one of about 1,000 reasons I'm marrying him. Next spring, we're having the wedding at my grandmother's house. Small ceremony, close friends, good food. Dorothy's already planning the menu. Meatloaf is definitely on the list. And somewhere out there, Corinne is working night shifts and wondering where her life went wrong. My father is in a nursing home, alone with his regrets. Jolene is in Florida, pretending none of us ever existed. But me? I'm in Boston, building something beautiful. I've got a career I earned, a partner who loves me, a grandmother who'll probably